Thank you for joining today's webinar. As some of you may know, this webinar is part of our cross-border e-commerce series. Today's topic is JD Worldwide for trade from Europe to the Chinese market. Let me introduce our today's speaker. His name is Alberto Diaz. He is a China market specialist with over 10 years of experience supporting European brands entering and scaling within the Chinese market with a strategic understanding of China's digital ecosystem. Alberto, thank you very much for joining us today. Over to you.
Thank you for having me, KU, and thanks everyone for joining today. So as KU said, the purpose of the webinar is basically to guide you through what Jingdong Worldwide is, and also especially, and very importantly, what it is not. So you have all the actionable information and insights to get started in the Chinese market through this tool. Okay, so the most important thing when we are looking at Jingdong and the Chinese e-commerce ecosystem is to understand Jingdong within China. Where does it sit, and how does it compare to the other channels, and why is it important? Why is China e-commerce something that you should pay attention to? Well, first of all, China is the largest, most important country in the world when it comes to e-commerce market penetration. Is very close to 50% for retail goods. That means that 50% of sales that happen in retail in China are done in a smartphone. Actually, that is a very big gap with the countries that are following close, which is Indonesia, UK, and the US. And has a much stronger penetration compared to these other countries. Now, European countries typically sit around 10% or even lower, sometimes 5%. So when we speak in Europe about e-commerce, we're talking about something completely different to what China understands as e-commerce, because again, 50% of sales happen through these channels, and it is the most important window that you should pay attention to communicate with the Chinese consumers. Now, you probably heard of the largest channel, which is Alibaba, that accounts for 40% of the total e-commerce market in China. But Jingdong is the second largest channel, which accounts for a fifth or 20% of this total e-commerce market. Now, why, you would ask, Jingdong is or has developed to be such an important channel if originally, I mean, there's such a big player as Alibaba. So what makes Jingdong Worldwide and different, and why do Chinese consumers go to this platform at all? So first of all, Jingdong is very, very advanced and very, very pioneer when it comes to the high-speed logistics. It is one of the most efficient. It is top one or top two, together with Shunfeng, another logistic provider in China. It is one of the fastest and most efficient and more premium logistic providers in China. And for most of their stores and their locations, they can deliver after the client's order in 48 hours, except for, of course, some remote regions. And they are closing that gap. They are shortening that time to 24 hours in tier 1 cities. That means Shanghai, Beijing, Guangdong, and Guangzhou and Shenzhen, which is basically where most of your clients will be based. So it is really fast. It is faster than any other platform, and that's why Chinese consumers choose it on the first place. Now, secondly, trust is one of the other differentiator aspects of this platform, because Jingdong praises itself for choosing very carefully their suppliers, and they have one of the most important models. It is a B2B2C, which basically is Jingdong selecting something similar to Amazon Prime in the West, where they go and select the suppliers, they buy the goods, and they resell under the Jingdong brand, let's say. So that is another of the reasons why it has become so big. 300 million users, so it's about a quarter of the Chinese population that is using actively this channel, especially in tier 1 and 2 cities. Again, the most developed cities, normally typically near the coastline of China, where most of your consumers for imported products will be located. Now, it is important to say before I move on that within this Jingdong worldwide cross-border ecosystem, there are two main two main types of stores. One is the B2B2C, which is the one I mentioned before. That is where Jingdong selects the supplier and resells on the name of the Jingdong brand, under the Jingdong brand. and as a supermarket or as a retailer themselves, that accounts for the largest bit of their source of revenue for e-commerce cross-border. But typically, you cannot open a store easily and list your products without getting the approval of the category manager for this model. So therefore, typically the brands approach Jingdong with a B2C store first, which is a store where you open under the name and the control of the brand, under your brand, and you communicate directly with the Chinese consumer. You sell directly to the consumers, and once you have built a presence in this channel, typically only the opportunity to open through a category manager, through the supermarket channel, let's say, the B2B2C only opens up. So we are focusing today on this step, which is Jingdong Worldwide B2C, which is basically an e-commerce channel, again, the second largest e-commerce platform in China. And what cross-border actually means is that it allows you to access the Chinese consumer, the Chinese market, without all the bureaucracy and complexity that typically entails opening an e-commerce store in China, which is registering local trademark, having local teams, having local offices, registering a company, having local stock, etc. So it is basically a streamlined door-to-door, in many cases, approach in which you can sell directly with the Chinese consumer without all of this bureaucracy. You have two ways of shipping or selling in this case, and I will go into details later on. But to start basically outlining those two are, one is direct shipping, where basically you can ship from your premises, from your European warehouse in your premises, headquarter or manufacturing location to the Chinese consumer. So no need to have stock or warehousing in China. Option number two, is the bonded warehouse. Bonded warehouse basically is having a warehouse within the Chinese geographical location, but it is outside of the customs of China. So that allows you faster delivery times while still being outside the Chinese market, so to speak. And basically each order is cleared upon client purchase. So basically when a client places an order, only then the stocks get custom clears, and the last mile delivery happens only after that. So what are the industries that are eligible or that can sell through this model? There's a document called the China Positive List. We can share this resource after the webinar, but it is basically a list that outlines all of the allowed industries. And there are many that are interesting for European SMEs. For example, FMCG, food and beverage, cosmetic is a very big one, skincare, mother and baby and pet products, among many others. There are only a few actually that do not qualify, and these are very sensitive industries, medical, some pharmaceutical, some chemical, some very strategic industries and sectors. But for most of the retail basically categories, this is an option to sell to China. The constraints and the most important constraint to keep in mind are basically that the clients, the Chinese consumers, have a limit per order and per year of purchase, but these limits are high enough for most product categories to allow European SME to have a business around this cross-border system. 5,000 RMB accounts approximately about $600 per item. So unless there are products that have a higher ticket price than that, typically this is not really a constraint, especially to get started into the market. Now, what is the percentage of the cross-border market as compared to the total e-commerce market share in China, or the total e-commerce sales in China? It's about 10%, but these changes from industry to industry. Now, there are some industries, for example, skincare or cosmetic products, where there are barriers of entry in China per se. You have to register a product and it takes from 1 to 5 years in some times, depending on the product, and therefore there's a lot more of number of brands using these models, so the percentage of cross-border is much higher. There are some others, such as fashion, where the Chinese consumer expects to have a reverse logistics and have a lot of product purchase. Maybe they purchase 10 items and they request refund for 9 of them and only keep 1 of them. And for that type of model, typically when brands evolve at some point, they set up their local warehousing within the Chinese system. But it's about 10%, but this is actually not small at all, because that 10% of customers are actually a niche within the niche that are already seeking and open to purchasing international products. So the platform, through this model, you're actually targeting to a more specific type of consumer, and therefore the platform is making your journey easier. The targeting cost, the targeting effort becomes reduced. So this is a very important point to pay attention to. Then it is by no means a small, basically, infrastructure. Is the number of warehouse that they have, Jingdong worldwide, is about above 1,000 in the whole country. So it is almost the same infrastructure in terms of size than the local and than the non-cross-border system. So it's very big, and there's a lot of partnerships. You don't necessarily have to use Jingdong Logistics. You can use your logistic provider. It is very likely already have a partnership with Jingdong, because the partnerships of our logistic international basically companies is increasing. And again, the active user population is within the platform is very big. It's about a fourth of the total market. Now, is it difficult to open a store in Jingdong worldwide? The short answer is, of course not. It is very straightforward and simple. Actually, the only thing required to open it is a review process that typically takes 1 to 3 days, let's say maximum about a business week. Basically, there are some documents that are required and collected. Typically, that's the longest part. That takes maybe brands a bit longer to get the documents together and basically submit and file those for the Jingdong review. But then once those are in Jingdong's category manager hands, now it's typically very straightforward. The review process takes about a week, and unless there's some additional documentation that needs to be provided, the store is open after the review is accepted. Now, once the store is open, the journey is not finished. So you have to, from opening store to start selling products, there's also a process that we will explain later, but the bureaucracy to open is quite straightforward. Documents you need are typically a business license or business registration in your country of origin, or sometimes doesn't need to be a European country. It can be your holding. It could be your holding which is somewhere else in another jurisdiction, such as Hong Kong, Singapore, etc. Most jurisdictions are accepted, with very few exceptions. Legal representative ID, and sometimes the structure of shareholding structure, in case there are many shareholders or family offices or different structures. They will typically ask for that as well. And then your international, or basically your bank account statement of your home country, basically, whether it is in euros, in US dollar. Most international currencies are accepted. Then you need a trademark registration, again, whether it is the European Trademark Office registration, or if it's in the US or somewhere else, but it's the international trademark. Doesn't need to be a Chinese trademark. And finally, the wallet setup. The wallet, it is basically the software or the payment gateway that you will use to receive funds into your international bank account in euros, dollars, etc., from the Jingdong system. And that will be set up also during this review week. And it is also pretty straightforward to get in place. Now, again, here we're talking about the cost. So the process is simple. The bureaucracy is simple. Do I need a lot of resources, investment to open this store? Is it costly? And the short answer, again, is no. Because again, if you don't need to set up a local entity, if you don't need local teams, if you don't need to register for local bank accounts, local trademarks, and you don't have all of these business expenses before you even start selling, then of course it is quite attractive as a lean, basically, entry model. And the only real expense that you will have is the commission of the platform. So the platform basically takes a commission that can vary depending on the HS code. So depending on your product type, it will vary from anywhere to 3% to 7%. So this is an average that we have used for a skincare product as an example, but it can range anywhere from 3 to 7%. And here is about 6%. So that's a real cost. It is not even a fixed cost; it's a variable cost. And the only fixed cost, which is not really a cost, is the deposit. This deposit is completely refundable again, it changes depending on the category of product. But if you close the store, if you decide after 5 years, I have registered my product, I want to set up my company, and I open another store, close this one, this is completely refundable, and it is only kept there to give the store a bit of cash flow, or in case there are some product, some platform infractions of the platform rules, or some client complaints, just basically for safety and for cash flow of the store, but it is completely refundable. We have never seen a case where this is not refunded upon request of closure of the store by the client. So pretty straightforward in terms of bureaucracy and costs. Now, again, this is the typical trading terms. I've mentioned 6%, but it can go all the way to 7% in terms of the margins of the commissions of the store. This is higher for the B2B system that we discussed at the beginning, but this is again a step for the future in case you want to open that type of store. But for the B2C model, this is pretty lean. The other cost that you could be looking at, which is the table I have here at the right side of the slide, is the last mile delivery in case you choose to have a bonded warehouse. So of course, if you're shipping directly from your country of origin to China, the cost will vary depending on the logistic provider that you use, the weight of the merchandise, how many you ship, etc. So the cost will be much more variable and of course higher per unit. But if you evolve at some point or you open a bonded warehouse, then you can ship in bulk, so the cost per unit to get the products to China will be much lower, of course, and the cost that you will need to pay attention would be the delivery, last mile delivery cost. Now, this is the Jingdong logistic cost, which is typically very high for Chinese standards. So there are other providers that can be used that are about half the price of this, but typically it is about 13 to 15 renminbi per kilo for the initial kilo, and then is about 2 renminbi for every extra kilo. So basically, for light products that are going to be shipped in the basically tier 1 and 2 regions of China, this is very cost efficient, but there are even cheaper providers. Now, one of the reasons to go with Jingdong, again, is because of trust and logistic, their logistic performance is top in the country. So it is definitely an option to upgrade the basically value perceived by the client to use a good logistic operator such as this one. And the only place where costs go a bit higher is for regions that are very deep into the west of China, such as Xinjiang and Tibet, etc., and other regions. But you typically will be selling to tier 1 cities near the coast, and therefore costs are very predictable. Now, again, going back to the logistic models that we, now that we're talking on cost of bonded warehouse, going back to this logistic models, what are the advantages, when to choose one versus the other? Typically, direct shipping, of course, as you already can imagine, is a lower risk. You don't need to have stock, you don't need to have inventory, you don't need to plan demand before even starting to sell, which is something very difficult to do, especially for products that have a shelf life, and therefore it reduces the risk. It's a way to test the market before you commit to it. It is very flexible. You can cancel. You don't have to know what are your hero SKUs before you start selling. You can then transition. That's what many brands actually do. They start with direct shipping, and at some point they know, okay, 80% of my sales are from 3 SKUs, so I'm going to stock those. The rest, the long tail, I'm going to continue shipping directly or cancel basically delist those products. So you can combine and transition from one to the other very easily. And of course, the advantages of the bonded warehouse are the higher speed. So Chinese consumers are very used, again, especially when using Jingdong, to high speeds. But that, of course, will depend on the competition. So what the competition is doing for your industry. If everybody is, if you have a similar product or substitutive in China and all your competitors are shipping in 24 hours, and you are the only one making the client wait for 10 days or 5 days, then, of course, you are at a disadvantage. It will impact conversion. If for specific industries or brands, if the client understands, because most of, for example, skincare cosmetics are entering China at the beginning through this model because of product registration requirements, the competition is doing that, the client is already used to this, so the impact in the conversion will be lower. So the typical progression again is to start with direct shipping, to test demand, validate the offer, iterate in terms of what is the packaging hero SKUs that I'm going to be selling the most, then stock those in a bonded warehouse. Now, and that's something that you probably heard, which is what is a TP and how to select one, and why is this important? TP is typically an agency that is a partner for e-commerce. Originally, it comes from Tmall partnership, but it extends to all the e-commerce platforms. And basically, they are the agency that take care of the relationship with the category manager in Jingdong, that take care of basically order fulfillment, marketing, and generating traffic in the store. Basically, they understand the mechanics of the store. They understand what is the market, what are the competitors doing, how to promote the product, how to do marketing, how to bring traffic to the store, how to fulfill orders and do the reverse logistics. So it is a partner to help you with these basically operational aspect of selling in e-commerce. Now, the client, of course, still manages the direct relationship with Jingdong, so they are the owner of the store. They are the also ones shipping to the bonded warehouse or to the client, depending on the logistic models that we choose. And they, of course, they keep the reporting and direct relationship with the TP agency. So this is typically the structure and how it looks like. And it is important when selecting a TP to have a few factors or a few things in mind. First of all, the TP needs to be able, in my opinion, to communicate at the P&L level with the brand and to understand what is a market entry strategy and to guide you through how to enter this platform, but also looking forward into the future, how to operate the platform in a way that doesn't complicate your Chinese market expansion in the future if you want to go offline or if you want to go to other channels. So you have a strategy and you have a P&L communication from the beginning. That is very important. Second point would be for them to have a specialized team, so that if you're doing Jingdong worldwide, then they need to have a personnel that is trained and specialized and only managing Jingdong worldwide and not all channels at the same time. Then very important if we're talking about Jingdong and Jingdong worldwide, Jingdong has a company culture that is a bit different from Alibaba, and it is much more in the traditional Chinese corporate culture, and typically relationship building is more important than in Alibaba because of the company culture and because of the model that they have. They are placing more importance in the communication with the suppliers. That is one of their, again, going back to trust, that is one of their advantages and why Chinese consumers select them, and that's why they keep basically emphasizing the importance of this. So it's important for a TP to be connected with Beijing, to be connected with the category manager in Beijing, to organize visits with the client, and sometimes when the client is not there, on behalf of the client, with the category manager to discuss strategy, to discuss how to improve packaging, to promotion, etc. That is very important. If you only can take one takeaway from this slide, would be that one. Then integration of out-store and in-store. Basically, this means they are able to bring traffic from outside the store, basically because they also have marketing teams, or they are able to do social media in China. And and last but not least, they have in-house teams. Many TPs, they do maybe outsource most of the services that they sell, but they don't do them in-house. Of course, the ideal is that all of these teams are connected, working in the same ecosystem, and the communication has no barriers between different teams, and to coordinate the market entry across all channels. Now, at the beginning, I introduced that after opening the store, after all the bureaucracy is finished and you have a green light from Jingdong, in order to start selling, there are some things that we need to do. And this is where this section comes into play. And this is probably the most important of all sections, because it's what happens when I open the store to start having sales. And for this, we need to understand how the platform works, and basically what are different ways and that you have to bring traffic organically and through paid channels. So in order to rank organically and the client to be able to find the store once the store is open, it's very important for the store to rank in the algorithm of something similar to the SEO in Google, but it is similar within the Jingdong, similar in Amazon, etc. And to understand what is the punctuations that you see here, I'm translating on the spot, but in here you have three main areas that the store gives a punctuation to. Basically, the platform gives your store a punctuation depending on what is the customer reviews. So it's very important to have good customer reviews from the beginning. At the beginning, sometimes you even have to generate those artificially, for example, through your partners in China or through your distributor or through your TP, etc. You can start placing some orders to create the first basically beginning of demand, and then the platform grows, snowballs from there. But at the beginning, it is important to not only start with the positive reviews, but also manage the negative ones, because not managing the negative ones also penalizes the punctuation. The post-sale services is very important. So whether or not we are offering the conditions of return, and typically Chinese consumer is used to 7 days, no questions asked, the product is returned, and that's what they expect. What's the quality of the service of the store? What is the quality of the KOFU, which is the customer service? Very important. And again, the Chinese consumer in this case, they are very spoiled because it's the largest and most developed e-commerce market in the world. The consumer is used to being treated as the king. So the consumer is definitely king in China, and customer service is expected to reply within 5 minutes, and is expected to work, at least be available from 8 a.m. to midnight, and sometimes some stores do it for 24 hours, because of course this is outsourced to specialized teams of customer service. But these teams need to be managed, need to be trained, and when they scale problems, these need to be managed as well, either by the TP or by the brand, or both, depending on the complexity. So it's important to know how to rank, and basically to do it properly, so that the store gives you the punctuation you need to be found by the Chinese consumer when they're searching for these for your type of product. And last but not least, logistics. If you claim to have a 24-hour delivery or a 5-day logistic delivery, but this doesn't happen, of course, this penalizes the store punctuation. So this is first. Then conversion. It's very important when the client lands in the store to improve conversion, that your listings are optimized. Basically, you have clear, high quality images and videos, ideally always having videos and having multiple images with potentially models, or potentially with people interacting with the product. And then what is called in Chinese the 详情页, which is basically something similar to a landing page. When the client gets into the store, they start scrolling down through the landing page, and they expect to see everything they need to know about your product. So what are the certifications? Why is your product special? How are you different from your competition? Where are you sourced? Do you have any sale points that specifically that the client needs to know, and they need to understand it in a way that is accessible for them, of course, 100% in Chinese, etc., and tropicalized. And then what are your packaging, your offers, your promotions? All of that needs to be communicated in a way that makes sense and is adapted and updated on a recurrent basis. For example, in China, there are many calendar promotions in e-commerce. You need to adapt the pricing, and you need to do this kind of promotions. If you buy 3, you get 1, or different types of mechanics, but they need to be aligned. If you happen at some point to have different channels in China, then they need to be aligned so that the price makes sense across your stores and across your SKUs. So in this case, it is very important to get traffic, to have a good conversion, and for that you need 详情页, landing page, good pricing, etc. Then once the conversion in the store and the SEO, these two are already in place, let's say what you need to do is start doing what is called in-store promotions. So again, this takes typically to get everything done, everything that we have discussed, to get the store from 0 to 1, it takes about a couple of months, typically 1 to 2 months. Of course, depending if it's a Chinese holiday season, Chinese New Year, etc. We're talking about working time, because we need to optimize the listing, we need to educate the algorithm, we need to list the products, we need to start creating those artificial reviews at the beginning, so that the algorithm starts identifying there's demand. All of this needs to be done over a period of the first months. And once that is finalized, only then you start with the in-store promotion. This is the paid promotion that allows you to bring traffic outside what is organic traffic. So typically a store to be in healthy levels of organic traffic, which is about 20 to 25% at least. It takes about, if it's fast, it could be done in 6 months, but it could take about a year, depending on the saturation, depending on the marketing investment, of course, and depending on what the competitors are doing and how saturated it is. So basically, once the organic traffic, or as the organic traffic is built, also there are some mechanisms to bring traffic, what is called paid traffic, no? And there are lots of mechanisms. It is much more complex than Amazon or other Western e-commerce platforms, because the Chinese consumer actually likes this type of promotional mechanisms in which, okay, if you spend 300 renminbis, you get what is called a hongbao, or a red package, or a discount of 30 renminbi. If you buy 2, you get 1 free, or you get half free, or you get a gift. If you get 2 bottles of my product, then you get a gift that is sourced from a factory, which it could be, if I'm selling wine, it could be a wine opener that I'm sourcing locally, and then I gift it to you. All kinds of promotional mechanisms that you can do, of course, paying in banners, in ad placements. So basically, this is when you pay the platform for them to place your product when they're looking for other similar products, or for even sometimes in other apps that are connected with Jingdong, etc. So of course, keywords very important, similar to Google keywords or any search engine keywords, etc. And retargeting, SMS, or also connecting to other platforms, or within the Jingdong ecosystem, you can retarget people that have already purchased your product. And all of these, there's typically a dedicated marketing budget for this paid advertisement. And then there's price promo. Price promo is what also you do to increase conversion, once sometimes even to bring traffic, but because the platform also basically puts you in a better, basically more visibility position when you are executing promotion. And that can be anything, any of the types of promotion we have commented before. So from category promotions to vouchers to Juhuasuan, which is basically limited time promotions. So if you buy before the end of the week, you will get a 20% discount, but it has to be before the end of the week. And there are many mechanics. And this is what you discuss with the category manager, typically with the help of a TP that knows the mechanics and how to communicate and plan all of this, because there's a budget, there's a planning, and there's a calendar. Last but not least, live streaming. This is something that doesn't need to be started at the beginning, but is more and more important in Chinese e-commerce, which is to have someone talking about the product live and selling the product through video and explaining the benefits and basically interacting even with viewers. This is something that could be incorporated at a later stage, but it's also nice to have to bring traffic. And moving to the calendar that we just described, basically, China, we work with what we call investment to sales ratios, and these ratios change in different months. So here we have from month 1 to month 12, from January to December. You can see that in January and February, typically the ratios are lower. The investment to sales ratios are lower. So basically in these months, typically e-commerce is when the Chinese New Year, people are all back home, and this where less volume of purchase happens. And typically we don't encourage to invest aggressively in these periods because we will lose money. We will encourage to invest aggressively in e-commerce dates, which the most important in China, you probably heard of Double 11, which is the 11th of November. There's Double 12 in December. You typically have to start to prepare to these promotions 1 month in advance or more. So there are some pre-sales that happen in October on previous months. And then for Jingdong, specifically important is 618, which is the date where the company was founded and is the promotional most important date in promotion in Jingdong, which is in the 18th of June. Those are the dates we have to keep in mind. We have to work in promotion. The calendar needs to be aligned for the investment in marketing to be as prosperous and profitable with high ROIs as possible. Now, I'm mentioning this very quickly. Besides all we have discussed, which is basically how to operate within Jingdong worldwide to bring traffic, you also need to keep in mind, this is another subject, but just as a note, that social media is also a channel to bring traffic, and typically even 70% of marketing budgets in China typically go to social media, because you don't only want to bring traffic from Jingdong, but also from outside the ecosystem. And that is typically equivalent of Meta in the West, so Facebook, Instagram. In China, it would be Little Red Book or Red Note and Douyin, which is TikTok. So in these platforms, you can educate and you can basically accompany the client through the upper and the lower parts of the funnel. You can extend your reach to the discovery and interest before the purchase and decision making, and then for fidelity, for advocacy, etc. And that's where WeChat, Little Red Book, and Douyin, TikTok come into place. So again, we're not going to go deep into this due to the time limitation, but just keep in mind that social media also plays a very big role in bringing traffic to the store. Now, what are the typical mistakes that I see and that we've seen in foreign brands entering China through Jingdong Worldwide specifically? First, they don't understand what are the different types of stores. For example, cross-border. Should I go cross-border? Should I go if I do direct shipping? What are the SKUs again that I should apply that model to, and when to transition to bundled warehouse? What is the type of promotion that I need to do? Typically, brands only, again, they rely in-store promotion or no promotion at all. And therefore, it is depends on the saturation. If it's a very unique product, you don't have competition, okay? But even if you don't have competition, China is a very quick market, you will have it very quickly. So you need to create barriers of entry for others. And for that, you need to protect your branding and create your story and to protect others from capturing your market. And that is marketing and marketing budgets, as we have seen, not only in the store, but also in social media. Not owning the relationship with the category manager. This is also, again, couldn't emphasize this more. It's very important for Jingdong to go to Beijing, to have a relationship with Beijing. Sometimes here we have organized not only meetups, but only working meetings, and sometimes even organizing Jingdong to go to the headquarters of the supplier or the brand to do some live streaming, some videos, some interactions, etc. So some cross postings in social media platforms, etc. For example, with the category managers that you see here in red, which is they are Jingdong workers that meet directly with the clients. Now, this is very important. Not adapting the packaging and price for Jingdong Worldwide. Jingdong will expect you to have packaging or a special price for if you have different stores in Jingdong. But even if you only have one, they expect to tropicalize your packaging to whatever the Chinese consumer is demanding. Sometimes you will find that maybe the 1 liter olive oil bottle or that you sell in many other markets, it doesn't fit in China because they use olive oil in different usages than in with the West, and therefore there's a different smaller packaging or a smaller price point packaging to attract new customers to try the product before they commit to a larger price, etc. So understanding packaging and price is very important as well, and to have a marketing budget, not only a budget but a plan. So how I'm going to promote, where I'm going to promote, when the calendar dates, the e-commerce festivals, and what I'm going to do in each of these times during the year, etc. And outsourcing everything to a distributor. Sometimes we have seen this, okay, we got a Chinese partner, so they do everything, and we will have one call at the end of next year. It is, of course, easier for the brands to get this approach, but it's not the ideal approach. The ideal approach is for brands to be in basically the front line with the TP or with the distributor, to have the conversation with Jingdong to understand why the Chinese consumer doesn't like the packaging and we need to change that, and what is the hero SKU and what are the promotions that we have to do, etc. So communication with Jingdong and with the TP and being in the front line of action is very important for success. Here, and I'm aware of the time, so I'm going to not spend a lot of detail here. We can jump to questions later if you have, but this is a typical dashboard of the software we typically use for brands entering China, and the purpose of this slide is to let you know what is the typical minimum investment to start selling in Jingdong Worldwide. Because we said opening is easy, the cost of selling is easy. Now, what is the barrier? The real barrier is marketing. And this depends on how saturated is the market, how your product is adapted and desired by the Chinese consumer. And depending on those factors, we will need one budget or another budget, different types of budget. But typically, typically, as you see here, the largest part of the budgets, as I said, typically go to out store, and that is marketing channels to bring traffic from outside Jingdong. And China is a very KOL, so basically authority when marketing is very important. So who is behind your product? Of course, you tell me the scientific research, you tell me the papers, you tell me the sell points, but who is telling me sometimes is even more important than what. Who is more important sometimes than the what. And therefore, we advise to cooperate with this type of key opinion leaders, and therefore the marketing budget typically goes a big part of that to those cooperations. And typically we're seeing that, again, very different for different products and industries, but for a first year, we're talking about 100K euro, US dollar to get the marketing and financing the operations of the store and get traffic running at an optimal speed. Optimal speed means that from 6 to 12 months, we have the organic traffic already at an optimal level, and we are also bringing traffic from outside the store, so that the ROI starts getting to a higher number. As you can see, typically channel ROIs at the first year typically are more, I'm jumping back and forth, but are negative, and the cash flow curve typically operates with runways of sometimes 9 to 18 months, so about a year as well, to pick up if we're talking about these budgets. Of course, if we go to lower budgets, there's always a certain point when if you go too low, it's better not to go because it doesn't make an impact, depending on saturation of the category again. But if you go too high, also there's the benefits at some point start becoming marginal. So there's always a sweet spot. And that's why we typically do market studies and to see how is the sector and what is the required investment to get what percentage of the market share. But again, the message here is expect to have a first year of negative cash flows or runways from 18 to 12 months. And then when you start building the organic traffic and traffic from outside the store and the brand presence is solid and you understand what is your packaging, what is the Chinese consumer liking, what is the price point, what is the communication that we have to adapt to the Chinese consumer looks like. This slide is basically for you to see how the basically cascade of costs, the difference between sales and profit, where does it go? Where does the money go? Typically for operating in a store like Jingdong Worldwide and B2C specifically, the one we've talked about all this far. In order to bring traffic, basically, again, we're going back to marketing. This goes for in-store and out-store, and promotions. Promotions, again, is price promotion. Sometimes it's just gifting, all the mechanics that we mentioned before. So these two are essential costs to bring traffic. So the store, once it's open, we cannot expect it to magically have sales. So you will have sales, but in order to get to positive cash flow soon, we need these two costs to be factored in. This is a bit similar of what I've been saying, but the first year being typically the negative runway before getting to positive. Of course, that depends very much in the margins of the product. So we will always look at what is product margins from COGS to what are the retail price that we're selling. Is that healthy enough to allow us a positive cash flow within this given time frame? Yes or no? And typically we're talking about products that at least are ×4 or ×5 minimum retail selling price as per COGS and the cost of production. Okay, and I'm finishing. I'm aware of time. It's already 4:50, so we're just hit the time limit. But I'm just going to share very brief, basically case studies to basically make liaison to what I've just explained previously, and what is important and what our success strategies look like in 3 different pillars. One, again, is paying attention to traffic, and in here we have a Spanish brand, which is Naifen in Chinese. It's a baby milk formula, and basically the relevant part of this is that in order to get traffic, you must not. The ideal optimal solution is not only relying in one leverage point. For example, not only in-store marketing, not only in out-store marketing, not only in influencers, not only in this case is also even combining offline to online, because there are some products that they are selling that they don't need cross-border, some products that are through cross-border, so those impact in the brand basically recognition. So for those cross-border products to get more traffic, also there are other products that are sold online and vice versa. So it's the combination of different channels and strategies to pull traffic, and how to combine those assertively to be cost efficient and to be traffic efficient. That is very important. For that, it is very important to have strategy and to have understanding on what are the options. That's the message. Second would be SEO. Again, at some point, this brand, in the beginning, they were having very different prices because the stocks were running out of shelf life, and there was a very low price in some SKUs that, of course, increased the liquidation of those stocks, but distorted the brand image. The consumer was saying, why do we have different listings with different links, with different prices at different da. So at some point, when price got all aligned and basically the comments and the negative comments got sorted out, this increased a lot the punctuation of the store that we have discussed at the beginning in terms of the platform SEO, and then that improves a lot the chance of the consumers to find the store among the first results, and that of course impact directly sales. And last but not least, after traffic and SEO, then is going back to conversion. And here we have another European brand where the problem that we identified at the beginning was the basically communication of that landing page that we described, that 相信页, that first message of why are we special. The client were asking multiple times, what is peptides, which is the main sell points of the product. So they were not even understanding the main sell points. And then the customer service was not really explaining that, and that is why the punctuation of the customer service was bad. They were replying in time, but they were not replying, let's say, in full, or they were not trained properly. So no customer service, no clear understanding on what's the sell point, and therefore communication impacted conversion. And it is very important when we get customer service scaling issues multiple times. For example, the clients are asking same question over and over, that we update that information in the landing page so that that question doesn't exist. So if that is a recurrent question, that question should disappear because it should be better explained in that 详情页, in that landing page of the product. And the customer service should be trained, should not just be outsourced. Okay, we have customer service, they know what they have to do. No, they don't know anything about the product, so they need either the brand or the TP or the distributor to train the customer service and have also communication with them for them to be able to assertively explain what the consumer doubts are having. So those are some, again, going back to the main pillars of traffic and how to successfully go from opening the store to having sales. These are some case studies, and basically we open up now for a time of questions. I'll be happy to address any doubts that you have during this time, or any other things that I have not covered. So thanks very much for your attention so far.